Very good evening. You're watching us live on YouTube. This is the Free Press Journal. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. With me is Abhijeet Iyer-Mitra, who is a security and defense expert who speaks on a number of issues related to geopolitics. He's an Indian defense and strategic affairs analyst, a writer and commentator known for his views on geopolitics and military strategy. I would like to have Abhijeet discuss with me today the very contentious issue of Pak terror, the dastardly attack in Pahalgam, which has shaken us all. We are still reeling under the shock and the absolute unbelievable, mindless brutality that this country has seen. And Abhijeet, good evening. Thank you for joining us. It is still an hour of morning. I'm sitting in Mumbai and we are looking at images of father-son bodies arriving, innocent people who were there in Pahalgam, for a holiday. All these images that I have been going through throughout the day. I mean, it's painful to the core. We haven't recovered from that, but it is still important, Mr. Mitra, to raise these questions that we are faced with today. And the first among that will be, at this time, at this point, what do you think provoked this sort of a mindless brutality? Or are these just brutes who can just strike at will and we don't have things in place to prevent these attacks?
Look, this has been Pakistani strategy from day one, right? If you notice, every time they talk about the Kashmir dispute domestically within Pakistan, they always keep talking about internationalizing the Kashmir dispute, keeping it in the international focus. And since the 1990s, what they've done is every time an American president or vice president comes, you see an attack like this. In 1998 or 99, I think it was, when Bill Clinton came, there was the Chatti Singhpura massacre. In 2006, when George Bush came, within a month of that, there was the Doda massacre. When Trump came in 2020, the stable Shaheen Bagh protest immediately morphed on the same day into the Delhi riot, seemingly out of nowhere, and which continued over those next 2 days. So, the vice president coming was some kind of we were incidentally on high alert when the VP came in Kashmir specifically. Even in that particular area, Pahalgam, we were on high alert at that time. The second warning, why we were on high alert at that time, was because, for the last 3-4 months, we've been tracking the speeches of these Pakistani grandees. And they have been very clear that, tourism is a tool of Indian colonization. Because we need to remember, till the insurgency, the active phases of the insurgency till about 2020, 2021, the entire valley was sort of, in a conflict economy dependent. 55% of the population, directly or indirectly, depended on the conflict continuing. Either people for getting money for stone pelting, or the entire supply chain of the security forces, either direct supply or indirect supply, food, provisions, logistics, etc., things like that, right? All the taxi drivers, tour operators, they were all employed by the military in some form or the other, or security forces in some form or the other. That has now been very comprehensively broken. In peak summer in June, July, if you come to Bombay or Delhi, you can get a 5-star hotel, say the Westin or Oberoi, for something like about 8,000 rupees. In Kashmir, there is no off season. In Kashmir, in summer, in peak June as well as in peak December, for skiing and for getting away from the heat, an average 5-star hotel room will cost you about 40,000 rupees, 30 to 40,000 rupees. So, the scale of tourism out there is so high. It was completely breaking the dependence on conflict out there. So these were the three trajectories why we knew when each of these intersect, the breaking of the conflict economy. When you break a conflict economy, people react the way a drug dealer does when a lot of people are getting de-addicted to his drugs, in that sense. Intersects with tourism being the speeches of Pakistanis coming out that tourism is the tool of Indian colonization, which is something that Ruhollah Mehdi, the MP for Srinagar from the National Conference, has also parroted that line. Of course, the National Conference always parrots the Pakistani line. And thirdly, the fact that every time an American dignitary comes, there is some kind of. We knew this was going to happen. something. I mean, may have happened.
But, you may say that, but the other angle that is coming in now from analysts and observers is that uh, the domicile issue, the fact that the abrogation of Article 370 has now opened out people of other areas, other regions to come into Kashmir, that doesn't suit Pakistan at all. To integrate Kashmir into the rest of us, isn't that again a big motive you feel, because that has been spelled out? It's no secret.
Not really, and I'll tell you why. Because if you read the
Hmm.
domicile law, it's actually very tough to get domicile out there. It's probably easier for
Mhm.
you and me to get domicile in Himachal, which has very similar laws, than it is in Kashmir, because there's all kinds of loopholes, a 10-year wait period, and God knows what not to get that domicile
But
out.
they are not educated and discerning lot, Abhijit. They are not like you and me who would understand the fine print. They probably think of Kashmir, is getting integrated and the rest of India will land up there, and our hold and our influence is fast receding. So, to deter that is what I
Actually,
was trying to ask you.
the Pakistani elite are in fact an extremely well-educated lot. If you see how they hold court in Dubai or UK, I've actually been to Pakistani weddings in London where they come out with whole trays of cocaine, mounds of cocaine where everybody's snorting cocaine. And
Okay.
they've all gone to Oxford and Cambridge and whatnot and things like that. The thing we need to remember
And they are
is,
connected with the militant outfits, is it? I mean, what you're saying is the educated lot and the militant outfit, it's not as if they're two separate things.
look, the industrial families, the landowning families, and the military families are the elites who are in a sort of not a catamitic, not a parasitic relationship, in a mutually beneficial
Symbiotic.
relationship.
Acha. Okay.
Symbiotic, exactly, symbiotic
Mhm.
relationship. That's the word I was looking for. And the militants are usually the rank and file, the dredges of the earth who you pick up. But see, the people who
Mhm.
plan this attack are actually pretty well educated. The thing here
Mhm.
is Pakistan is going to the dogs right now. Internal
Mhm.
collapse, financial collapse, and things like that. They
Mhm.
need some kind of escalation of tension, because remember, Afrida, this has been a standard thing in the past. Every time we refuse to talk to them, there would be some huge terror attack. We would be then go on the brink of war, and the international community would then force us to talk to the Pakistanis. And
Mhm.
this suited the Pakistanis, right?
Mhm.
In case the talks went very well, in order to
Mhm.
break any kind of progress that could happen, they would then orchestrate a terror attack to stop the talks. So it was
Mhm.
a classic case of heads you win, tails you lose, because they wanted the dispute to keep festering. In this
Mhm.
case, you see that equation doesn't work, because it doesn't matter how much international pressure comes on us, we're not going to sit and
Mhm.
talk to them. And it doesn't matter how many attacks happen, we are not going to, we're not going to talk to them. B, if there are no talks, there is no question of stopping the talks or stopping any
Yeah, but
progress.
who do you talk to? Isn't it that power of these dual power centers? You have the military chief who is spewing venom against India every opportunity he gets, and you have a so-called political head. Now, who does India talk to? We don't know who's calling the shots. They're both operating in two different tangents. So,
That is
even there, we are facing a huge challenge.
that is by intent. You see, they don't want to
Hmm.
solve it. So you're essentially
Hmm.
entering a round robin game. वो musical chairs का game होता है ना. So we're basically doing a
Hmm.
musical chairs pantomime with them. It's their little game for two, and they want you to play along because their domestic uh, 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 validation comes from the fact of the Kashmir issue, as they call it, fighting on the Kashmir
Hmm.
issue,
Hmm.
Azadi,
Yeah.
Kashmir ki Azadi, etc., etc.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't want it to end, because the moment it ends, it is bad for them. The problem
Hmm.
is we've brought it to an end on our terms, not on their terms even. So this is a desperate quest for legitimacy in that sense,
Hmm.
and I don't think
Abhijit,
the
we are
Indian
showing live pictures of the Union Home Minister surveying that area. So I was just telling our viewers that these are the live pictures that are coming in of Amit Shah looking at that exact spot of attack. So we are playing that out even as you are giving us an analysis of this terrible incident. Go on.
So, this is something that they did not, they haven't thought it through. Now, the second thing we need to remember is it is the tail end of any insurgency. When you think the insurgency is over, which is when some of the biggest attacks globally happen. It happens in Iraq, it happens in Afghanistan. It happens in Syria. It happens in Kashmir. It even happened in Punjab. If you remember, the killing of Beyant Singh in the car bomb attack happened in 1996 after normalcy had been restored to Punjab. So, this attack doesn't mean the insurgency has started again. Just like the Bombay attack of 2008 doesn't mean that there was an insurgency in Bombay. Kashmir is normalized. The insurgency is over. Are there going to be attacks? Yes. This is not going to be the last attack. Remember, for every 400-500 attacks you foil, one attack will always get through. And this is the classic case of one such attack getting through. We also need to address the fact that the Indian response to this was slow, number one. And two, there was an intel failure. This thing about intel failure is so much nonsense, Afrida. It is just dropped. I notice all these fly-by-night armchair experts come and say intel failure. You know why? Because it makes them sound very cool, as if they're very technically adept at dissecting what an intel failure is. Intel is a very complex thing. It's like a 50,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, but you're asked to solve it without knowing what the final picture is. If you've bought jigsaws for kids, you know the final picture is always on the cover of the jigsaw. And it is based on that you put the jigsaw together. Now, Intel is like putting a 50,000 piece jigsaw together without knowing what the final picture is. Now, a jigsaw at least is only one person doing it. And it is only one dimensional. It is only visual intelligence. Here, there are signals intercept. There are WhatsApp intercept.
But you are saying on one hand, India's response was slow, and then you are negating that there couldn't have been an intelligence failure.
No.
Are you not contradicting yourself?
Let me finish. These are two completely different things, and I'll connect it one by one. So, this intel failure, this is a catch-all phrase used by these fly-by-night analysts. We have seen no proof of an intel failure so far. Anything even remotely close to an intel failure so far, because intel is extremely difficult to fuse. Remember the 7th of October attack, only one intel analyst in Israel was able to actually predict it. All the other analysis was wrong. We also need to understand wrong from failure. There are two different things. Second is the case of the response. Now, this particular area where the attack happened is 30 minutes of a trail. It's not even a motorable road from the main road. The closest proper in-force military chowki is almost 40 minutes away. The alerts went out the attack started at 14:50. Within 15 minutes, the alerts had been reached. There was a drone flying 200 kilometers away, which was immediately repurposed. Within 15 minutes, we can see the trail. I've tweeted out all the images of that particular drone, the flight tracker trail of that drone. Drones fly very slow. They fly at about 270 kilometers per hour. So within 40 minutes, it was over the operational area. Within 50 minutes, ground forces. Now remember, ground forces isn't, one cop hears attack ho raha hai and immediately goes in with his danda or gun. No, because you don't know how many terrorists are out there. You'll end up killing more people doing that, right? So what you need to do is you first need to congregate 15, 20 people. You don't even know if 15, 20 are enough. So first the drone needs to fly by. It needs to do a heat signature scan of the entire valley. There is such a thing as line of sight also. So in dense foliage like that, you have to do multiple rounds. And if you've been on a plane, when it's descending or taking off, you realize how big each loop is. One loop that the plane takes to turn left or right is, Malabar Hills right up to Kolaba or Bandra or something like that. That is the turn radius. In this case, it's much shorter, but it's still not very short. So, there are multiple loops. They have to ascertain that 15, 20 are even enough, and then you give the go ahead. They reached within 50 minutes of the attack starting. So first, may have been an intel failure. We don't know because none of the bits of intel have come out so far. Number one, that is the subject of an investigation. And the second is the response was as rapid as you can be, short of a Star Trek, Scotty, beam me down kind of thing. And, the teleporter then magically puts you at the speed of light where you need to be. That's not the way things work.
But then are you in some way arguing that this couldn't have been averted? Because see, a lot of people are going to question that why are our border surveillance not foolproof? You have a hostile neighbor. We are fully aware. I mean, India has international borders in other parts, but this particular one is something that is extremely hostile and you can take no chances. So why is it that, if at all, if it's there is a case of infiltration, why is that still happening? And also the issue of local support that is
Bilkul.
coming up again and again. Hmm.
Okay, so two things here. First, there is no such thing as a foolproof border. It is a physical
Hmm. Hmm.
impossibility in any country on earth.
Not even in the age of AI, there is no such surveillance
Even
possible.
even in the age of AI, and this is what the
Hmm.
7th of October in Israel teaches us, that is, in fact,
Hmm. Hmm.
over dependence on AI can be fooled
Hmm.
by the most rudimentary of measures. So, the more
Yeah.
high tech Israel became,
Hmm.
the more low tech
Hmm.
Hamas went,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
That's a
there
very
is
powerful
such
actually. Yeah.
it's not just artificial intelligence, there is also artificial stupid that goes with artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even North Korea, if you look at it, the North
Hmm.
Korea South Korea border is much more
Hmm.
heavily guarded, mined, trenched than any other border on earth. And still, North Korean soldiers managed to make it across the minefields and things like that into South Korea to defect. Right. So there is no such thing as a foolproof border in existence anywhere on earth,
Hmm.
anywhere at all. So this is just hocus pocus. There is this constant fight between technology and the Luddites. Sometimes the Luddites actually end up winning,
Hmm.
surprisingly.
Hmm.
This is like the war of the worlds. I
Yeah.
don't know if you see
But
the
what
movie.
about the local support thing? Are there sleeper cells that the government has failed to crack down on? This is a union territory now. The Ministry of Home Affairs is responsible for internal security after making all claims of Kashmir being completely peaceful. This has shattered that image of Kashmir like how? And
Now,
probably that was the intent. But tell me about, where have we failed in cracking down on those elements which are helping and providing and supporting this network of terror?
right. So we still don't know what the support network of this particular group of terrorists were. There were four terrorists involved.
Hmm.
The first was exfiltrated out of India in 2018. So there was no way we could have
Hmm.
monitored him after that in the period where he was infiltrated back in again. There is a second
Hmm.
person whose name we know, but we
Hmm.
don't know his antecedents yet. Two people are not in our image database. They're not in our Aadhaar biometric database. So they are almost certainly Pakistani, because there is no Indian, there's almost no Indian except maybe Jarwas or the Sentinelese in Andaman who have not been, biometrically recorded and things like that. We still don't know if there is a sleeper cell involved in this or if there was local support given in this at all. Number one. Number two, the general standing orders in all the forested areas as far back as 10 years back, when I first revisited Kashmir after spending my childhood out there, was that, when they used to go into these rural farmsteads, apple orchards and things like that, these would
Yeah.
be one house in the middle of 20, 30 acres, where even if you scream, nobody can hear you. And the standard thing was, if a terrorist comes to your home, give them shelter, give them food, give them whatever support they need. After they leave, call us up and we'll give you a bonus. And do you know 99% of the terrorists who were caught were, because they used to feed and regale these terrorists, apple orchard owners, whatever orchard owners, used to regale them, feed them, provide them hospitality for 2, 3 days,
Yeah.
take money from them for that hospitality. And after they left, they would immediately call up the local army contact person and say, "Ye साहब ये इधर आया है, इसको मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको कितने लोग हैं, क्या नाम था." They will give all the details. Otherwise, how do you think we were as successful as we were? The average life expectancy of a militant in Kashmir was around 1 to 1.5 years. By the end of the insurgency, it had come down to 6 to 8 months. You don't do that without local support. When you're talking about local support for terrorists, let's also accept there is lots of local support for the armed forces as well, albeit for monetary gain, which I have no issues with. And the military was also very smart. They said, "हमसे भी पैसा लो, but उनसे भी पैसा लो, पर मारना उन्हीं को है." I'm fine with an arrangement like that. Now, let us see. See, there are so many things about this particular thing that have not been investigated. Were these people going to people's houses? Was there any local host for these people? Because, if you come to Pahalgam is a full 100 odd kilometers, maybe 100 kilometers east towards China from Srinagar. Uh, uh, you can actually trek it through the forests. Uh, so there is an investigation that is required to see, A, was there an intel failure? An intel failure is not a pre-gone conclusion. Two, was the response adequate and was it as timely as could be under the circumstances? And three, was there local support? And this we now have to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, my concern was only to understand that how could this happen, something of this magnitude, how could they get there so easily, and why are these vast stretches, as you put it, not manned, not monitored, and as you say that there is no such thing as a foolproof border. Then are we saying that we cannot possibly avert? And you also, I think, said that out of the 4 or 5 that are averted, one gets through. So you are convinced that this is that one. So it is not as if with the best of our eyes and ears on the ground we could have averted it. That's a concern. I'm sorry, I'm coming back to that again.
Yeah, it exactly right. Not only is this the one that got through, there will probably be 2, 3 more such spectacular attacks. We need to be very clear about it. Because you can foil as many as you want. You have to succeed 100% of the times. The terrorist just has to succeed that once.
Yeah.
Right.
At
And
this
that
point of time, you also made this point that this was timed with J.D. Vance's visit, because that gets you the maximum mileage, and that has been the pattern earlier as well. So that would again, of course, lead you to the question that why then were you not careful enough? But leaving that aside, tell us, what about the international community now who are pledging their support for us? Can we hope to, put pressure on Pakistan to actually send a strong message? Of course, there are lots of people who are talking about how we should now, avenge this militarily. But do you think that we can also elicit the support of those nations who are coming up and saying, we are with you, we are with you? How can we use that support in our favor to put pressure on Pakistan?
Sure. So, see, first to correct what you said, the response was adequate. Intelligence, it's just that you never know where the exact attack is going to happen. Communications intercepts aren't like, terrorist Abhijeet calling terrorist Afrida and saying, Afrida Behan, theek Kolaba pe pahunch jao exactly outside Ratan Tata's bangla in Kolaba, and we're going to go kill Ratan Tata. Okay. This is not how they communicate with each other. It's all in code and things. It's all euphemisms and so on and so forth. Coming to international pressure, you notice the tone and tenor of everybody. Russia is rock stock behind us. China has condemned the attack, both their ambassador in Delhi and in Beijing. Trump is very much on board. The Australians are very much on board. The only major country that hasn't opened their mouth about it is Canada, not the current Prime Minister Mark Carney, not the his challenger Pierre Poilievre, who's going to lose the election very badly from all signs that we see, not even their embassy in Delhi, right? So other than Canada, everybody is backing India. Now, see, the thing is, this is sympathy. Does it actually translate into help when we go in? Because some kind of retaliation is almost a foregone conclusion against Pakistan. Will it be Balakot, Balakot plus, Balakot max? I don't know, but it is most probably going to be some form of air retaliation that happens. Now, here we can be fairly certain that the time taken for the attack will not be to actually get the intel for the attack. The intel for the retaliation is already there. What is going to take time is to first clarify our options, number one, and then negotiate with the international community to see to it how much leeway they will give us. Remember, Israel went in all guns blazing, and then it had all kinds of things imposed on it, ROCO, sanctions, boycott, disinvest, whatever, things like that. You don't want that. So it then becomes a process of sensitizing the international community. Support has to be built. It is built behind the scenes very quietly through quiet diplomacy. That is what is going to take time. It's probably going to take a week, 2 weeks max to do that. I think the negotiations with the Americans and the Australians are already done. We will depend on the Americans to get everybody else on board. China will be the big question mark out here. So the question really is, how much will China tolerate? Because China is not a country we intend to brief about our plans either, because they are a hostile country, right? And they will almost certainly leak it to the Pakistanis. So let's see. It's already on our side. What we have to do is have a very serious conversation with them off the records. maybe 1-2 hours of conversation per country to be done simultaneously, a week, 2 weeks max. But when that retaliation happens, I think you will see very significant international support for India. I can't hear you, Afrida. You're muted.
Sorry, yeah. I was saying today Prime Minister chaired a high-level meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security attended by the top union ministers. He just returned earlier from Saudi Arabia, and the Jammu and Kashmir CM has also called for an all-party meeting on Thursday. So, as you said, we do imagine that a strategy is being worked out on how we respond to this. But my last question to you: what are India's options really?
I would personally think it would be air-based, and I'll tell you why. With Pakistan, a private humiliation doesn't count as a humiliation for them. To use a Hindi phrase, public mein naak ragadna padta hai unka. So, it can't be targeting some isolated base in Balakot like we did the last time, where they claim only crows were killed and we're unable to produce the battle damage assessment images to show what we destroyed. So it has to be something very public in an urban area that is militarily consequential. I would suspect it would most probably. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we have to make a very blunt statement. It has to be public so that the Pakistan military's nose is cut in public, that it inflicts fairly significant damage on them. And second, the retaliation of Pakistan when it happens, like it happened with that swift retort in which pilot Abhinandan was shot down. That can't happen again. And remember, now at least we have capabilities that we didn't have then. So, for example, now we have the Rafales, all 36 Rafales, which have these Meteor missiles, which can literally keep the F-16s 250 kilometers. They can engage the F-16s 250 kilometers away. We can actually shoot their F-16s down before those F-16s have even seen us. So, that is a huge capability augmentation that has happened since then. And we also have the Scalp missiles on those Rafales, which, unlike the Crystal Maze, whose missiles whose mating to the Mirage 2000 was faulty. This one, you can literally fire a missile 300-400 kilometers inside Indian territory and it'll land up 400-500 kilometers inside Pakistani territory. So there's a lot more options. I suspect it will be air options. It will be deep within Pakistan because you want to show and publicly humiliate Pakistan.
All right, we'll have to wait and see how that works out, what decisions are taken at the highest level. Clearly, the Prime Minister is personally at the moment at the top of things, taking stock of what's happening on ground. Security has been tightened around the Kashmir Valley and along the Srinagar-Jammu highway. A lot of people are reacting, and of course, there are some very, very strong words that we just heard from Abhijeet Iyer-Mitra as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Abhijeet. Great pleasure speaking to you about this. On a very sad day, of course, like I said, these are unspeakable crimes and brutalities. But thanks for breaking down for us the overall picture. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Afrida. Very kind.
Right. With that, we conclude this episode. Thanks very much for watching. Do put in your comments and tell us what you think about the discussion that we just had. Thanks very much for watching. Let's also play out some of the important reports that we've been carrying since morning. The visits of the Home Minister to the affected areas and the other updates that I've just done.
people from around the world turned into a nightmare. On April 22, 2025, what should have been a peaceful holiday at the breathtaking Baisaran Meadow near Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir was shattered by terror. In a horrifying act of violence, militants from the Resistance Front, a Pakistan-backed group, opened fire on a group of tourists, killing 28 innocent lives and injuring more than 20 others. They reportedly posed as policemen, even asking people to recite the kalma and checking for circumcision, a terrifying method to single out non-Muslim tourists. Among the deceased were not just civilians but brave individuals like an Indian Navy officer and an intelligence bureau official, and even tourists from Nepal and the UAE. The attack wasn't just a blow to Kashmir's peace, it was a reminder of how terror targets humanity itself, regardless of identity. As the nation grieved, such operations intensified and political voices condemned the act. But beyond politics, beyond security forces, came the voices from another influential space, the Indian film industry, Bollywood. Bollywood actors known for lighting up the silver screen stepped forward to reflect the nation's pain. Akshay Kumar, a man who has often portrayed patriotic characters, tweeted with grief and anger, calling the incident heartbreaking and standing in solidarity with the victim's family. His words were simple but powerful. We must stand united against such acts of terror. Vivek Oberoi, who himself has acted in films touching on terror and national security, shared a deeply emotional post. He called the attack a reminder of how fragile life is in the face of hate. He prayed for peace and, like many, hoped that justice will be swift and strong. Ayushmann Khurrana also shared his grief. He wrote in his Instagram story, he mentioned prayers to everyone affected. Then came Sanjay Dutt, who has had a personal journey of transformation and resilience. He expressed shock and sorrow, calling for unity against hatred. He reminded his fans and followers that while films entertain, real lives are being lost, and it's time the nation doesn't just scroll past these headlines. These stars, known for their glitz, glamour, and big screen presence, suddenly felt like one of us, disturbed, helpless, but hopeful. And that's the power of cinema. It brings people together, and when it speaks up, it echoes. Bollywood has always been more than entertainment. It reflects the mood of the nation, from war films that stir patriotism to biopic that celebrate unsung heroes. It has the power to influence mind. And today, its silence would have been deafening, but it didn't stay silent, it roared with pain. This moment also brings us to ask, what more can the film industry do beyond condolences? Can more films be made on real stories, on resilience too? Can Bollywood amplify the voices of those affected by terror? So that's all. Share your views in the comment section, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe to the Free Press Journal for more such updates.
The shocking and brutal murder of innocent tourists in Pahalgam has left the country stunned at the mindless brutality. In cities far from the violence, the pain is palpable. The victims were, after all, ordinary people, visitors simply seeking beauty, peace, and perhaps a little escape into nature. What they found instead was unthinkable. Across India, there's been an outpouring of grief, not just for the lives lost, but for the cruel reminder that violence can shatter the most peaceful of moments. Communities have come together in mourning and in outrage. There is disbelief, there is sorrow, but above all, there is a call for humanity to prevail. In Mumbai, that call echoed from the Sunni Bilal Masjid, where ulemas and community members gathered not just to condemn the act, but to reclaim the message of peace, compassion, and dignity for all human life. Religious leaders came together to strongly condemn the violence and send a clear message of peace, unity, and justice. We were there to witness the sentiments firsthand and to speak with those who are raising their voices against hatred and standing in solidarity with the victims.
देखिए, पहलगाम में जो दहशतगर्दाना हमला हुआ है, ऑल इंडिया सुन्नी जमीयतुल उलमा आलमी तहरीक रज़ा एकेडमी, जितनी भी सुन्नी तंजीमें, तहरीकें, पूरे देश का मुसलमान, भारत का मुसलमान जो है, वो उसकी निंदा करता है, उसकी मजम्मत करता है और हुकूमत से ये मुतालबा करता है कि दहशतगर्दों पर कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। जो दहशतगर्द कैंप चला रहे हैं सरहदों पर, उन कैंपों पर बमबारी होनी चाहिए, उन पर कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। यूएनओ से हमारा मुतालबा है कि वो पाकिस्तान को दहशतगर्द मुल्क करार दे।
इस किस्म के वाक़यात से जो लोगों के अंदर एक डर और खौफ पैदा हो रहा है, ये डर और खौफ दूर करने के लिए ज़रूरी है कि वो दहशतगर्द जिन लोगों ने ये हरकत किया है उनको फौरी तौर पर गिरफ्तार किया जाए और सख्त से सख्त सज़ा उनको दी जाए।
हुकूमत इन दहशतगर्दों को एक सबक सिखाएगी। ये उरी और पुलवामा से ज्यादा कंडेमनेबल इंसिडेंट है। ये टेररिस्ट जो आए हैं पड़ोसी मुल्क से, इनका एक ही मकसद है कि टेरर फैलाया जाए, मासूम लोगों की जान ली जाए। जैसा कि आप लोग जानते हैं कि कल पहलगाम में व मीडोज में दहशतगर्दों ने, टेररिस्ट ने उस माउंटेनियस एरिया में वहां पर इंडिस्क्रिमिनेट तरीके से और मजहब पूछकर उन्होंने मासूम लोगों को वहां पर उनका कत्ल किया है। हम इसकी सख्त से सख्त अल्फाज में इसकी मजम्मत करते हैं, कंडेम करते हैं और हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि हुकूमत इन दहशतगर्दों को एक सबक सिखाएगी और साथ ही साथ हम जो लोग वहां पर जिनको कत्ल किया गया, इन टेररिस्ट ने इनको मारा है, हम उन तमाम फैमिलीज के साथ खड़े हैं और हम जो जख्मी हैं हम दुआ करते हैं कि वो जल्द से जल्द सेहतयाब हो। दूसरी अहम बात यह है कि ये एक इंटेलिजेंस फेलियर भी है और हुकूमत को, नरेंद्र मोदी हुकूमत को देखना है कि उनकी डिटरेंस पॉलिसी कितनी कामयाब हो रही, नहीं हो रही है। चौथी बात यह है कि उरी हुआ, पुलवामा हुआ, ये उरी और पुलवामा से ज्यादा कंडेमनेबल इंसिडेंट है ये, क्योंकि जो सिविलियन लोग हैं वहां पर जाकर ये टेररिस्ट जो हमारे पड़ोसी मुल्क से जरूर आए हैं और वहां से आकर यहां पर हमारी सरजमीन पर मासूम लोगों को उनकी जान लेते हैं और बड़ा दर्दनाक वाकया है ये, बल्कि ये मैसेकर है और हम नरेंद्र मोदी हुकूमत से इस बात का डिमांड करते हैं कि वो अकाउंटेबिलिटी किसकी है फिक्स करें, डिटरेंस पॉलिसी को अपने देखें और उरी और पुलवामा से बड़ा इंसिडेंट है और उम्मीद करते हैं कि हुकूमत इन तमाम जालिमों को सबक सिखाएगी और इनको जो लोग मरे हैं उनसे इंसाफ होगा और एमआईएम पार्टी उन तमाम खानदान और परिवार के साथ खड़ी हुई है जिनकी जानें गई हैं और जो जख्मी हैं हम ये मुतालबा करते हैं, डिमांड करते हैं कि जल्द से जल्द उनको जो भी वहां पर तिबी इमदाद या मेडिकल फैसिलिटी जरूरत है उनको पहुंचाई जाए। और ये कंडेमनेबल इंसिडेंट है। इसमें कश्मीर में टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री को बहुत बड़ा इससे नुकसान पहुंचाने की कोशिश की जा रही है और ये टेररिस्ट जो आए हैं पड़ोसी मुल्क से, इनका एक ही मकसद है कि टेरर फैलाया जाए, मासूम लोगों की जान ली जाए और ये इनका एक तरीके से वहां से आना यहाँ पर हमारी सरजमीन पर और आकर इस इलाके को चूज करना, क्योंकि आप टेरेन आप देखेंगे पहलगाम में वो मेडोज जो है वहां पर घोड़े के ऊपर जाना पड़ता है आपको, ऐसा रोड भी नहीं है। तो ये बड़ा ही दर्दनाक और तकलीफदेह बात है और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार से हम यही कहते हैं कि ये उरी और पुलवामा से ज्यादा खतरनाक और दर्दनाक है और जितना जल्दी हो सके गवर्नमेंट उन परिवारों को से इंसाफ करे और हम तमाम कंडेम करते हैं और उम्मीद करते हैं कि हुकूमत इस पर एक स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन लेगी। स्टेटमेंट में दिया हूं वो उतना काफी है। अब ये बाद में बोलेंगे सिक्योरिटी कैसा होना बोल तो सिक्योरिटी फेलियर हुआ है ना, वहां पर सिक्योरिटी फेलियर हुआ है क्योंकि आप देखिए पिछले साल रीसी एक एरिया है, ये वैष्णो देवी करीब है, वहां पर भी 9 टेररिस्ट को पिछले साल जुलाई में मारे थे। रीसी इन वैष्णो देवी लास्ट ईयर जुलाई में, एग्जैक्टली लास्ट ईयर जुलाई में 9 टूरिस्ट को वहां पे आके लोग टेररिस्ट आकर पाकिस्तान से वहां पर उनका मर्डर करे, उनको हमला करे उनके ऊपर। तो इन चीजों को रोकने की बहुत जरूरत है। अकाउंटेबिलिटी फिक्स होना जरूरी है। डिटरेंस पॉलिसी क्या है गवर्नमेंट उस पर चेक करे, क्योंकि हम सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक भी किए, बालाकोट भी किए ना हम लोग। और तीसरा यह है कि गवर्नमेंट को ये समझना चाहिए कि ये उरी और पुलवामा से ज्यादा दर्दनाक है ये, और उम्मीद करते हैं कि ये जो टेररिस्ट पाकिस्तान से क्रॉस करके आए इनको गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया सबक सिखाएगी और इंसाफ करेगी जिन लोगों की जानें गई हैं। अब हैदराबाद के हमारे एक आईबी ऑफिसर की मौत हुई, कई ऐसे उसमें ऐसे लोग हैं जो अपना मैरिज एनिवर्सरी बनाने गए, कई ऐसे लोग हैं जो अपनी शादी करके गए। तो ये तो बड़ा दर्दनाक है, तकलीफदेह बात है ये।
Behind the Pahalgam attack and who is the mastermind? Hi, my name is Sneha Biswas and you are watching the Free Press Journal. In one of the deadliest attacks in Kashmir in recent years, 26 people, mostly tourists, lost their lives in a brutal terror strike at Pahalgam on April 22. Several others were injured in the assault that has sent shockwaves across the nation and beyond. The Resistance Front, a Pakistan-backed terrorist outfit and proxy of Lashkar-e-Taiba, reportedly claimed responsibility for the massacre. The group released a statement on social media citing demographic change due to non-local domiciles in Jammu and Kashmir as its justification for the attack. It falsely accused non-local tourists of being settlers and threatened further violence. The attack occurred while US Vice President J.D. Vance was in India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi was on a state visit to Saudi Arabia. PM Modi had to cut short his trip and return to Delhi the next morning to hold urgent security meetings with top officials. Top intelligence sources and multiple Indian media outlets have named Saifullah Kasuri, also known as Khalid, a senior LET commander, as the suspected mastermind behind the attack. Reports also suggest that 2 other Rawalkot-based Lashkar commanders, including one named Abu Musa, are under scrutiny. Kasuri, who has ties to LET co-founder Hafiz Saeed, is believed to have led LET operations from Peshawar and had been active in inflammatory rhetoric against India. His recent statements have vowed increased military action in Kashmir, and unverified reports claim he aims to capture Kashmir by 2026. Formed in 2019 after the abrogation of Article 370, the TRF is widely regarded as a proxy of Lashkar-e-Taiba, as I mentioned. The local group emerged to give a local face to terrorism in Kashmir and has since been responsible for numerous attacks on civilians, including migrant workers and Kashmiri Pandits. In January 2023, India's Ministry of Home Affairs officially banned TRF under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, declaring it is a terrorist organization. Despite the ban, TRF has continued its violent operations, most recently taking credit for an October 2024 attack in Ganderbal that killed a doctor and 6 migrant workers. The brutality of Pahalgam attack, especially targeting innocent tourists at the height of spring travel, has drawn widespread condemnation. Security has been tightened across the Kashmir Valley, and joint operations by the Army, CRPF and J&K police are underway to apprehend the attackers. Strong words of condemnation is coming from all quarters. What are your thoughts on this? Do share that with us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Free Press Journal. Thank you for watching.